Hello, good evening, useful content community. Well, we have a bit of a delay. Let me just admit that. I'm waiting in studio for Billy to arrive. And I know normally I would come in with the intro and I will do all that at this time, but I'm not going to do that because it's quite possible that we may run a different show right now. I actually did pre-recorded the show with Alex B. Sheridan, and also I have a show that is talking about the myth of is the myth of what did I do? The myth of the attention span. And we could do either one of those things right now. I think Billy may have been delayed some way or some form, so he's not actually on. He's supposed to be on right now. Let me see who's in the comments here. Hey, Shania, and all my Facebook group is here, and they're saying hello. Good to see you guys. Right, Gail, it's so good to see some familiar faces right now. So the show is still going to go on. I think Billy may be delayed, or he may be running late, or something may have happened. Oh, there he is. He's on. There we go. There we go. There we go. All right, guys, we're gonna run the show, right? So Billy just jumped in the studio. You know what? While he's fixing his mic, let's bring everybody on stage. Since we have already started, might as well do that and make it all natural. Let me get my headphones on. All right, Billy, if you're ready, just nod your head and let's just nod your head if you're ready. Good. Nice. So we're gonna bring you on. Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me okay?
You sound like Michael Stelzner there, right? For a minute.
Say that again.
You sounded like Michael Stelzner there for a second with the hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I'm good. This is an interesting start because normally I have a big intro, so I'm going to do it still. I'm going to do everything still. And you okay? Your trip was all right? You just got back?
I got back yesterday, and today was for anybody looking at my LinkedIn post. Today was a surgery day for my wife, and she's healthy. Right. So my apologies for being here right at the start of the show, but had to take care of some things. So I'm happy to be here with you.
No problem, no problem. That is an interesting thing because those things kind of like, I have a friend who's actually dealing with that right now. So I that's 100% that's understandable. You have to deal with the family and your home first, number one priority, right?
Of course, health is number one, and I'm grateful that my wife is healthy and that we got through today. And now we'll get to the next phase of the journey. But glad to be here.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so let's run the intro and let's start up. Useful content community, glad to have you. Michelle is popping in to say hello. Let's do the regular thing that we do at the beginning of the show, and then we'll run with it. So welcome, useful content community. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, making it part of your marketing strategy, you want to stick around today because today we are honored to have with us top podcast producer, co-founder of Podify and the creator and host of the Inside Out and For the Love of Podcast, Billy Samoa Saleebey, to show us just how to do that.
Wow.
Broadcasting live from Relate Studios in Trinidad and Tobago, it's the Useful Content Creation Show with your host, Juma Bannister.
This is the Useful Content Creation Show where business owners come to learn how to create useful content and build better long-term business relationships with their employees and their client. My name is Juma Bannister. I am your host, and I'm happy to be with you. And for those down in the comments, we are the Useful Content Community. We own the bulb emoji. The bulb emoji, we love it very much. Let me show you what that looks like. We threw up our bulbs down in the comments, and drop your hashtag UCC Live. And if you're hearing the replay, drop your hashtag UCC Replay. And for those who are in my Facebook group who are streaming to right now, we can always say learn with UCC because we are here to learn brand new things. And today I'm happy to introduce our very, 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 very special guest who is going to teach us useful things on why podcasts are critical to your marketing strategy. Welcome to the show, Billy.
Juma, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And what an intro. I am so grateful to you to have this opportunity to share hopefully some things that will be valuable to your audience. And first, you got my name right, which is more than I could say for the majority of people who introduced me. I'm impressed, man. So you've done your homework. You must have listened to somebody who can pronounce it correctly, do it the right way. So thank you for doing that. And I'm ready, and let's roll. But let's roll with this, man. Let's do this.
Actually, you know, there is a place in Trinidad and Tobago that has a name that sounds very, very similar to your last name.
Really? Okay, that's unusual.
Yeah. And when I was because I had that moment where I was like, how do you pronounce this? And I did go and listen to a few people pronounce it, and I waited till you said to somebody, you got it right, and then okay, that's the one. But there is a place that sounds very similar, so I did do my research on that and some other things too.
So that's, by the way, that's lesson number one. You have within your grasp, anyone that's producing content, you have within your grasp the ability to know the guest. And I think that's a really important point, is do your homework. And that you just illustrated a great point, which not only don't hear somebody pronounce it that does it the wrong way, hear somebody pronounce it the right way, and then get some form of confirmation. So great lesson.
Yes. I've been listening to you for a while talking about that, and one of the things I wanted to ask you off stage was, and this I didn't plan to ask this on stage, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How did you get Chris Do? What was that process like of getting Chris Do on the podcast?
Well, great question. So the way that happened was I was on Clubhouse and very active on Clubhouse, and Chris Do came into one of our rooms, and he actually sent me an Instagram message that blew me away. Because here's a guy who he doesn't need to take the time to send me a message. He's got almost 2 million subscribers on YouTube, very successful on Instagram and every platform, Emmy Award winner, right? And a very successful business. But he sent me a note and he says, hey, I really love the way you moderate your rooms. Like, I like your style, I like your voice. And it was very touching that he gave me that compliment. And so we formed a relationship. I had asked him some questions on Clubhouse, basic stuff, just getting to know him. And I decided I might as well ask him. So I just basically sent him a note and I said, hey, would love to have you on my show. Here's what the show is about. I think we could have a great conversation. Would you be open to it? And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. And then I had him on the show. And one of the things that I'll share this, because this is another good tip, is when I invited him on the show, I didn't want to just have another Chris Do interview, because everyone can do that, right? Don't ask the same questions that everybody else has asked him. So I started with a question that was very personal. Which was, where were you on April 30th, 1975? I think it was April 30th, 1975. And that was the day that was the fall of Saigon. That was the last day of the Vietnam War. And that was the day that he immigrated to the United States with his family. And so he was kind of taken aback by that question, because it was an unorthodox question, and it touched him on an emotional level. And so that's a powerful way that I like to start my show, which is I either want to make them laugh, or I want to give them something that is maybe more emotional, or something that they're not expecting, because you only have so much time with them, right? 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. Start strong. Start with something that's going to create an experience. And that really is the through line of my life, is try to create an experience no matter what I'm doing, whether it be a podcast, an event, a movie, whatever. Give them something that is going to be something worth remembering.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you took that and turned it into a mini documentary. And I looked at it and I was blown away at the quality. I mean, and Chris just went into storytelling mode, and he kind of he did so much with it. And I could see the moment when you asked the question, he was like, oh, it really hit home, and I think he almost said like he did your research. I think he said that,
He
and
did, yeah.
yeah, and it was a interesting and an amazing moment in like the culmination of everything you've been saying for a long time. It's like get to know your guest, do your research, all those different things that you say over and over again. And it was a kind of a masterclass in just doing just that. And I hear you when you said you did not want to be just like everybody else, which is such a good thing. Excellent.
I appreciate that. And to your point on the documentary, we condensed a 45-minute interview into a 9-minute, kind of like a documentary, where we added visuals, imagery, video, B-roll, things of that nature, some music, and then we cut together the parts that would help to share his story in a meaningful way. And it may seem like that was all done back to back in the interview, but no, that's some of it's from the beginning of the interview, some of it's from the middle of the interview, some of it's from the end of the interview. And so we took that and I did the first pass. I cut that myself because I wanted to get the parts of the interview that I thought would be the most touching, the most emotional, and also the most personal. Mm-hmm. And then I had I have an amazing editor who I work with who's on my team, who then helped and I put some music to it and a few of the B-roll pieces, and then he added the rest and added some of the motion graphics and really tied everything together. So it's part the reason I share that is twofold. One, just because you record a long form interview doesn't mean that it needs to only be in that state or that it only needs to be like a minute or 30 seconds. You can find that middle ground. And then two, collaborate with the people who you think can help bring the story to life, which in this case was somebody on my team.
Yeah. And you did a really excellent job with that. It really came together well because I kind of was seeing the process. I saw the interview and then I saw the thing come out after. I was like, oh my goodness. Did they plan this? Did you plan that? Was that planned or did it just happen?
No, it wasn't. And that's the beautiful thing about an interview is that you never know for sure what you're going to get. You can have some ideas and you could guide the conversation, but a conversation's dynamic, right? It's going to change because there's two variables, at least. There's lots of variables, but there's two big variables, which is you as the host and then the guest. And then the other variables are the questions, which you control, but you don't control their answer and you don't control the way they answer and the nuance there. So combination of all those things blend together, which is why I love interviews, because no two interviews are exactly the same. Now, again, I said you want to avoid having the same interview, but like no matter what, your interview is always going to be different because of you. And the more you infuse yourself and the more you craft the interview in such a way that creates that unique experience, that's where people, I think, where they get more out of it because they want new, they want novel. They don't want the same thing over and over again. So you control that. And I think anyone who's interviewing or doing anything creative where you have your own, I call it your own DNA or your own fingerprint, then that creates the uniqueness, the it factor that you need, which makes content memorable.
Right. The it factor. And I think that, that is part of what you bring when you do interviews. And I know you've had I checked stuff out. I looked at Rolling, which was interesting. Well, not the whole movie, just like the cuts of it.
You saw some clips. Okay.
Yeah, saw some clips and different things like that. Okay, so I know that you're a big travel guy. You've been, many places. You're also a big city guy, but what? Just because I'm in the Caribbean, I'm in Trinidad and Tobago. What Caribbean islands have you been to?
I've been to the Bahamas. I've been to Dominican Republic. I've been to Belize. I know I'm stretching a little bit, but within the range. Where else have I been? I randomly was on a Disney tour, so I hit the Disney island there that they have. Not your quintessential Caribbean island, but I need to explore more. To be honest, I really want to go so many places, and I'd love to go check out Jamaica. I'd love to go to Trinidad. I want to see every island at some point. Why not? Right. So better question for me, where should I go?
Oh, so let me answer that question. Of course, come to Trinidad and Tobago. I have to say that number one. Number two, my second home is Antigua. Go to Antigua.
Okay, I've heard great things. Yes.
And number three, Barbados. That's my third home.
Barbados.
Go to
Okay,
Barbados.
my mom went to Barbados. Yeah.
She did. All right.
Yes, a long. When I was a kid, I was like, I want to go, but I was too. It was an adult. It was an adult trip, right? But I've traveled a lot. I've been to, I think, 43 countries now. Wow. I'm 45, so I'm a couple years behind where I wanted to track, which is at least matching my age. So, right. But the quarantine gave me a little bit of a hiccup there. So I want to travel more. I love exploring. There's so many interesting things you can learn about places, about people, about history, culture. And I think we develop as humans when we see how other people live. And also it reminds us of how similar we all are, and also how we also have unique things about us, right? Because we do have more in common than we have different, I think, as generally speaking, as a species, but also there's so much beauty in learning about the smallest little things, how breakfast, right? Yeah, exercise, rituals, dinner, customs, all these things combined. And I think it reminds us of the humanity in us all, and that we all want some of the same things: connection, love, to be loved, health, some of these basic core fundamentals of life. And yet we all have these little nuances about how we find those things and how we attract those things into our lives. So I just love traveling. It's to me, one of the most important parts of my own personal development has been my travel.
Right. That's so good. Well, let's jump in now to some of the things that people may want to know about podcasting. And there's so many things I found out about you. I could write a book about it, and I'm sure you would be able to write the rest of that book because you know everything about yourself. But let's talk a bit about some of the things surrounding podcasting. But before we do that, there's normally a big question that I ask everyone, because I know you produce a lot of content, and there is a big question that I ask everyone who comes on the show. I ask them this question, which is, what makes your content useful?
I love it. What a powerful question. Well, I think a few things make it useful. One is I always look for a way to either share new or novel information or share it in a new or novel way. And what I mean by that is the packaging, the framework, the way in which it's delivered. There are a few different variables, but basically human beings, all of us, ignore the things that are the same. We just do. We're hardwired to forget the things that we see every day. And you might have seen this in some of the other work that I've done, but you drive from point A to point B day in, day out, you start to forget that you're driving from point A to point B because you go on autopilot. But because we, by instinct, only look out for something that may put us in harm's way, that new thing, we really don't listen or pay attention to the things that are the same. So I try to figure out a new angle, a new delivery mechanism, or the information itself is new. So that's one. The other thing I think that makes my content unique or impactful or actually helpful is I always try to bring it back to how it's affected me. So stories are important and critical, and they're also unique. Every piece of information that I share that ties back to a personal story, I'm the only one that could share it in that exact way because it's my personal story. And because of that, because human beings are naturally emotional and we tap into emotion, when we hear a story, even though it may not be our story, it's a human story and it's relatable. So I try to share a story that other people can relate to and tap into that human side of our existence, which then I believe makes people more receptive to what I'm sharing and gives them, in many cases, I'm not saying every case, but in many cases, something that they can tie back to their own personal journey, and which makes it, I think, and I hope, more beneficial and more welcomed into their own life.
Excellent. Excellent. So the thing is that you bring out that new thing and the personalization of the stories that will make people connect with the content that you have. That's excellent.
You
Uh,
nailed it.
and okay, so let's talk about podcasts and marketing, because that's your thing. At least one of your things. That's your current thing. You actually run the company Podify, and you would have a lot of insight into how these things get done. So let's present a scenario. So I have a company, well, I actually do have a company, but let's just suppose I had another company, and my company is currently running its marketing campaigns. It's doing its current marketing, and my company does not have a podcast, and we're doing fairly well without it. Why would we want to integrate a podcast into our marketing strategy at all?
Mm. Well, this is such a great question, and I'm glad that you asked this, because I think a lot of people don't understand why or how a podcast can help their business. I think they look at it from a very traditional, narrow lens, and they think, well, most people start a podcast because they want to monetize it in a traditional sense by putting ads in it. And I look at it from a very, very different perspective than that. The fact is, newsflash, the majority of podcasters do not make money by selling ads and putting it in their show. If you're to look at the numbers and just do the number crunching, it's a CPM model. So every 1,000 downloads, you're going to get X dollars. You call it $30. And that's being generous. Sometimes it's 15, sometimes it's 50, but let's just take that median, $30. It doesn't take a math genius to figure out it's not going to be able to be monetized in any meaningful way unless you're getting tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of downloads.
Right.
So a business is not going to use it from a revenue generation standpoint in a traditional sense. But to your point, it's marketing, but I would look at it a little bit different. It's business development, not just marketing, but business development. And the reason why I think that's important is almost every business can stand to have new doors of opportunity open to it. And what I mean by that is you never know who, by interviewing them, you might meet who can in some way influence your business or open a door of opportunity to your business. So if you have a podcast, guess what? Every single person you interview is a potential new connection, and valuable connection at that could lead to a strategic business opportunity. It could lead to more marketing opportunities that open up. I mean, the list would be vast, right? To think about all the different unique opportunities. Now, aside from that, every time you do a podcast, you are increasing your brand awareness, and your brand identity is what I call taking the flag and pushing it further in the dirt. Your flag of authority is extremely strong, especially if you have the domain expertise and the credibility in the podcast that you're delivering. And the more you do that, you're going to be seen as a brand expert, and your company will be associated with that expertise. Now, every company is different. I'm not saying every single company without question has to do it. There might be another reason to do a show. It might be for internal purposes. Maybe it's for employee retention or employee culture. And you want to do an internal show to create that connection with the employee base and make them feel heard and share information. Right. So maybe that's another use case. I really think it's about the intention behind the show. So you're going to get all kinds. You're going to get some that's a brand awareness, brand identity. Some of you're going to get more of a culture piece. Others you may just say that you want to be closer to your customer. And therefore the podcast allows you to be closer to your customer, because every single show you do, it's an intimate medium, right? You're hearing my voice or whoever's voice on this microphone, but it's coming through on a set of headphones, and you're on a subway, you're in your car, you're running at the gym. And because of the duration, meaning the length and also the consistency of a podcast, even if you only do it once a week, once a month, even that regularity, it helps to garner more trust and a lot more belief in the person you're listening to, you feel like you know them. And people buy from people they like, know, and trust. We all know that. Well, a podcast helps people get to know you, like you, and trust you in a very unique way that I don't think is possible literally in any other medium. There's no medium that I think will allow people to get others to know you better than if you were to do a podcast. And so any size business can capitalize on that.
All right. Right. Any size business. And that kind of makes me want to ask another question, which is,
Sure.
All right. So, okay. So does your wife still run the preschool?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. She doesn't have a podcast, does she?
She does not have a podcast. No.
All right. Let's just suppose you were making a podcast for her, right? She comes and she said, "Hey, Billy, I'm thinking about making a podcast for the preschool. What was the process? Would you immediately put somebody like her in? How does it start? And what's the process of it?"
I always start with one word, and that word is intention. What is the intention behind starting the podcast? Is it to make money, generate revenue, create awareness, like all those things we just talked about? For her, is a good example. She's got a small preschool and she's at capacity. She can't even take new clients. So business development would not be the use case, would not be the intention. But,
right,
and this is the key point, maybe she wants to charge more. In order to charge more, she needs to provide even more value to the parents. So maybe she could get really creative with, hey, we're going to do a weekly or bi-weekly podcast. And on that podcast, I'm going to be interviewing experts on early childhood development. And in those sessions, we're going to talk about what parents who have kids that are in that age range, 2 to 4, can be doing to help to enrich the lives of those young minds. I mean, we all know that you develop between the ages of 1 and 7. Those are such critical. It's such a critical period of your life. This is where the foundation is set. And if it's set wrong, you're going to have some problems. So I think if her preschool said, hey, as part of this preschool, maybe it's a private podcast. Maybe it's only for the parents where she could do, and that's another option. You could do a closed podcast where it would go just to the parents, or maybe she does that and it raises the awareness and the brand identity of her to where instead of charging X, she then will have even more people knocking down her door saying, we want in. The list that she has now, because she's got, a waiting list, the waiting list starts to grow. Guess what? The bigger that waiting list gets, the more flexibility she has in what she could charge. So that would be the way I would think about it. So the first thing I would start with was intention and why you're doing it. And then from there, we would then work on, okay, now that we know what the purpose is, let's set some goals. Let's have some markers that we're striving towards. And then let's map out a strategy and a plan to reach those goals based on the intention that we set.
All right. So what I'm hearing from you is that a podcast is very, very specific. It's like you have to have an idea. Do you help people clarify those goals? Because some people may come like thinking, I want to do this. I think it may be good, but I have no idea what my goals should be. Do people come like that and say, help me clarify my goals? Is that something that happens often?
100%. And not just clarify the goals, but clarify what it is that the show is all about. What's the DNA of the show? Why would somebody care about this show? Why would somebody listen to this show? And I think all too often what happens, unfortunately, is people get excited about the proposition of doing a podcast. And they start, to their credit, they're not letting analysis paralysis get in their way, and they just start, which in a lot of ways, I think that's great. However, I will say that taking a little bit of time to narrow your scope and focus so that you know, with no uncertain terms, who you're speaking to. And sometimes you got to go narrow before you go wide. Look, I don't think there's no podcast police. So you could do anything you want. And I will always suggest do what you're passionate about and what you could do sustainably over 5, 10, 15 years, not 3 or 5 months. So find a topic that resonates with you. Like you love creation, you love content. So you're talking about that. It's something that's really important to you. You believe in it. You love it. You love talking about it, which is why you're able to do this show because it's something that you're passionate about. And so I think anybody needs to find that. But beyond that, how do you take that and narrow it as much as you can, niche down again, and then niche down until it hurts? And I didn't make that up. I think that was it was John Lee Dumas said that. And so once you've niched down till it hurts, you almost feel like, oh my gosh, it's so narrow. I can only talk to not just people who like this one thing, but it's like this one brand of thing, right? So
Right.
I have somebody that does essential oils that I interviewed, and she started with like she was going to do health and wellness, and then she narrowed the scope down to just wellness. Then she narrowed it down to essential oils. Then she narrowed it down to like a specific brand of essential oils. So she kept on getting narrower and narrower, which served her, and then her show did really well as a result.
Right. Her downloads went up.
100%.
Okay. That's good. So I guess one of the things that people could consider is that after they figure out what it's about, then they have to look and see what it's really about, and then what it's really about, and they have to keep on cutting off the things that don't matter as much as they think.
That's right. You got it, man.
Because it's nice to have the idea of having a podcast. I mean, the idea of having any kind of content out there, it sounds good, but it has to serve a very specific purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, look, it does, and at the same time, you got to do you. So figure out what you want, and this is the general you, what you want, because I would much rather see somebody get started and pivot than wait and regret not doing anything, because I see that happen too. So I think in a perfect world, you serve a specific audience. That specific audience is hungry for what you're serving. Because if you're serving pancakes to a bunch of people who are on a keto diet, you're going to have a very tough time serving those pancakes. I have a friend who started a show on YouTube, and who are his fans? They're not just people who like sports. They're not just people who like the NFL. They're not just people who like the NFL and watch YouTube. They're people who like the NFL, watch YouTube, and they're 49ers fans, San Francisco 49ers. So he's gotten really specific, and his show has done insanely well because he's gotten narrower, and he's now speaking to about a specific team, which eventually he could go and go into fantasy or the NFL more broadly, but he got narrow before he gets broad. And he's got like 7,000 subscribers in about 2-3 months.
Wow.
So it shows you that people are hungry for what he's serving. So the last thing I'll share on that is do your research, do your homework, see what else is happening. I'm not saying to copy, but competition is I look at competition as collaboration partners. So think about if somebody's already seeing success either in your space or adjacent to your space, that's a good sign. That's, especially if people are hungry for it. And so figure out, well, what are they doing? What's going to be your unique spin on it? How can you add your own flavor to it so that it becomes more you and not this other person, just a carbon copy of this other person. You know what I mean?
Right. So figure out what people are hungry for and then feed them that thing.
That's right.
Essentially. And that way you'll have a sustainable crowd. You'll have people who will always come back because they love the thing that you're feeding them.
That's right. People love sushi. They want to keep coming back for some sushi.
Yeah.
Keep serving that sushi. It's like, figure out, it's a flywheel. You got to figure out what that it is, and then get good at making that it, and then make it over and over. And then every now and then you taste the recipe. Like, hey, is this recipe still what I once thought it was? Does it need a slight adjustment? But then monitor and measure super closely so that if you make that tweak to the recipe, are people starting to hit the door and say, I'm not coming back? Or are you getting more people coming? And this is why I do believe that the people who are incredibly successful in content land, which is like all social media platforms, they are really, really good at tracking and measuring their content and pivoting when they need to adjust and make those necessary changes to improve the recipe.
Yeah. I love that, because that is something that you may not think of, is that you have to keep on, like, do I need to adjust that? Do I need to make slight tweaks to it? What are the people, what's the kind of feedback that people are giving me? And they say, is this too salty? You know, do I need to
That's right.
adjust this? Because today I listened to a podcast and I've been spoiled because the podcasts I listen to, they generally have very short intros and they go right into the podcast. I listened to a podcast today that the intro was so long that I was out exercising. I stopped the podcast and I skipped it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the guy had good things to say because he came recommended, and I'm like saying, I can't wait for this intro to finish. And it's going to skip over. So that might be a piece of feedback you might get from your particular crowd. And then you will adjust the thing down to make sure that the people are getting what they need. Yeah, something like that.
Well, I think that's a great example. And I think to your point, podcasting inherently is one directional by design, or at least by the sheer fact that you're speaking into a microphone and somebody else on the other end asynchronistically listens. In this case, it's synchronistic because it's alive, but in most cases, it's recorded and then played later or edited and published later. And so I think what a great podcaster is able to do is give the feeling of community and interactivity without it being naturally in that state by inviting conversation. And the reason I bring this up in light of the question is you only know where you're missing if you're willing to ask people who are listening.
Ooh.
So you just have to. And so invite them to, there could be any number of ways. They could send you an email. They could send you a direct message. They could send you a speak pipe where you just give a voicemail. All these different ways that you can get them to communicate with you. And then when they do, ask them if they're up for a phone call, a Zoom call, anything you could do. It could be a 5-minute call where you, hey, thanks for listening to my show. I'm so grateful. I wanted to take this chance to get to know you, learn more about you, and find out, hey, how did you find my show and things of that nature. And then you have that conversation. And what happens is, first of all, most people be surprised because they don't take that extra effort. The second thing is they're going to go from being a listener to being a fan, and go from being a fan to being a super fan. And that's what you want. So if you did that 2 or 3 times a week, all of a sudden in a year, you have 150 super fans. And so it doesn't take that long. It might seem like the long road, but onesies and twosies add up too. And you gotta do sometimes the legwork that feels slow and methodical, because the result that you'll get out of 1 or 2 people who are advocates for your show, who are telling everyone they know about your show, that's huge. And so I would focus more on downloads and more on helping people create conversation about your show by producing great content that makes people want to talk about it, and by inviting them to join the conversation to where they feel included and they feel like they're a part of it.
I find that's such a great point. That's such a great point. Like, you kind of just gave a roadmap as to how to grow your super fans, your loyal community. And the way I like how you calculate it, because my brain thinks in 1 year cycles. So you said 150 fans in a year. And that is like, if you do an episode every week, that is 50 times 150. That's how much downloads you're going to get in general as a baseline. That's so important when you think about how you're going to build out. That's like a strategy for building out the people who are in your community. And wait, I'm just realizing now that talking about community, we have not spoken to the people at all since we started.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, they're going to be upset with me. Maybe, I don't know. Let's see. All right, so let's see. Shania said good night. She was here from the very beginning. I have a lot of people from my Facebook group that they don't usually show up for some reason. Gail is saying good night. I hope Gail is still here. Gail is all the way from Barbados. So when we said Barbados, she was like, yeah, Barbados.
Oh, good. I see it. Yeah.
April was here from my Facebook group. So April, good night. Then we had Michelle who passed through, just popping in to say good day. We have Kelsey.
Michelle, it's good to see you.
Kelsey from Belize. You said Belize in the list of places you went to. Then we have a ton of Facebook people who were saying hello. Then we say Kelsey, of course, on the UCC Live. And what a podcast voice. They're talking about your voice, Billy, not mine.
I'm losing my voice. It's late here. It's not that late, but it's I've had a long week and I'm losing my voice. So thank you.
Hopefully it doesn't go all the way out.
We're good.
And Andrew saying, hey guys, it's been a while. Good time to come back, Andrew. And Kareem is saying, good to see Juma here business in the Philippines, islands,
All
and
right.
watching your brother. Very good. One of my good Facebook fans said, I'm late. It's okay. It's fine. So many comments. Stephen G. Pope, you know Stephen. He's saying,
Yeah.
He's saying, Juma, like it's overrated. Understand and trust is king. Of course. Are podcasts better than videos or lives in terms of reach? Get to that. I'm sure you have an answer for that. And then somebody's asking, how do you know the target? How do you know to target the people who you want to get to hear in your podcast, right? I think the person is actually asking, how do you get your target audience to listen to your podcast? For a person who doesn't know anything at all about podcasting, how do you enter the podcast stage effectively? So many good questions. Which one do you want to tackle first, Billy?
Somebody brought up, I don't even know if you read it. I think it was actually that one. That's the one. You just pulled it up. You pulled up the one I wanted to answer. And Gail, thanks for asking this question. So are podcasts better than videos or lives in terms of reach? And what I would say is I would stop looking at them as different. They're all forms of communication and disseminating ideas and concepts for others to either be entertained or educated. And I actually believe there's two pillars. One is audio, one is video. Okay. And they work in harmony together, but they also work separately as well. So what I mean by that is a podcast has a very intimate and what I'll call a long form style where somebody can listen in and almost eavesdrop on a conversation, and it could be an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. If you're Joe Rogan or Lex Friedman, it could be a really long time. Excuse me. And then videos, I think, are powerful because there's really no other platform or medium out there where you can create emotion, especially when you incorporate music and editing and kind of touching back to what we talked about with Chris Do. You have an incredible opportunity to take content that was audio only and repurpose it in video form, especially if you record the video, and give a new experience to somebody, but using a lot of the same ingredients. So it's like, hey, what dish is better, nachos or burrito? Well, they're both great. There's different packaging, and it kind of depends on what mood I'm in. If I'm in a gym, I'm going to listen to a podcast. I went from nachos, but I might eat nachos after the gym. And so I also think that video is incredibly hot right now, not just right now, but it has been for years. And for anyone who is producing a podcast to make sure their podcast gets more awareness, I would say it's almost malpractice to not have some video component. It could be a live, it could be edited versions of their show, it could be a combination, it could be short form video clips that are vertical, that are going on IG Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. I mean, there's huge organic reach there. And especially if you know the nuances of these platforms and you know what your audience wants, you're able to push content out that may get a lot of traction, a lot of eyeballs, because those platforms have a ton of reach right now. And so I'm very bullish on video. I feel that video is the future of podcasting. So that's why I say they're not like different, but they're the same. I feel like anyone doing a podcast should strongly consider the video component of that podcast, because some people are going to want to watch the video on YouTube. Some people are going to want to listen to the podcast in their car. And if you have just one, you're missing a big, big slice of the pie. And nobody wants half a pie. Give yourself the whole pie, especially if it's banana cream.
Right. So video and audio, one kind of like complements the other.
That's right.
And you should try as much as possible, as much as you want. That idea of taking clips from it. Today I was listening to a podcast, and this person had done an audio podcast for years. And then they said, well, just recently they record video, but they don't release the entire thing. What they do is use it as clips for promo for the actual podcast. And as you said that, it clicked in my mind. Yeah, that's something you can do as well if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, why not? I mean, you got all this, you have all this content, might as well use it, right?
Yes, definitely. Let me just say good evening to Russ. He's saying hello on Thousand Times Humor. No, thank you to Billy. Billy is here sharing all his wonderful knowledge. Could we take on a couple of the other questions, Billy? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
let's do it. I love it. Yeah, feel
Okay,
free. Which one do you want to do next?
Okay, so let's say, how do you get your target audience to listen to your podcast?
So step one, you need to know who your target audience is. That's probably the step that most people miss. They're too superficial. They don't get deep. And so I suggest writing out a listener avatar. And what I mean by that is get hyper specific about who you're speaking to. Like, think of it as if you're writing a story about one human being, just one. They have a name, right? Their name is Susan. Their name is Gail. Their name is Juma. Whatever their name is, and where they live, what they do for a living, what they eat for breakfast, where they shop, where they hang out. Are they married? How old are they? Annual income? Like, literally write it all out. Get as specific and granular as possible. What other podcasts do they listen to? What videos are they? What channels are they subscribed to on YouTube? Once you have that, that's going to give you a big portion of your playbook, because from there, the simple answer is go to where your audience is. And so, do they hang out on Twitter? Do they hang out on Instagram? Do they hang out on TikTok? Do they hang out on Reddit? And in Reddit, where specifically do they hang out? And so, like, I have a friend, a guy who I interviewed named Harry Duran, who has a podcast on vertical farming. It's literally called the Vertical Farming Podcast. And what you may not know, I didn't know this, but vertical farming is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But yet it's also very targeted. So he took this idea of having a niche show, right? Niche show, but still very big. He did his homework. And now he sells sponsorships for his media company, which includes the podcast and includes that he posts on different platforms, that he has a newsletter and all these different things. Because you shouldn't think of yourself just as a podcast or just a live or just a YouTube channel. Think of yourself in more broad terms. And now he has tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 sponsorship windows for people to sponsor season 6, I think he's on, or whatever he's on, or 4. And the reason I bring this up is he's talking to a very, very specific audience. And so he now knows, in order to find that audience, he needs to go on other podcasts that target that audience. He needs to bring on guests that are going to share it with their friends in that audience. He needs to go to platforms where people hang out. And it's like immersing yourself in this environment of your audience. And again, the more intimately you know that audience, the easier it will be for you to play in that space. And the last thing I'll share is that when you are doing these promotions and people are resistant to self-promotion. And so the sooner you can get to a place where you're adding value in a way that it's regardless of what you do, people will figure out what you do. Give them an opportunity to fall in love with you before they figure out like what podcast you have. Fall in love with you because this person is relentlessly helpful, like John Asperian. Yes, he's a copywriter, but he's relentlessly helpful before that even becomes part of the conversation. And he's a great example of somebody who gives, and now his business is thriving as a result of his ability to give selflessly and not be a constant advertisement. Nobody wants somebody that's constantly pushing their own agenda, because you resist that. It's just it's cringeworthy.
Yeah. I guess there's something that could be said for the ability, because I guess if you're just kind of starting off your business, and I've seen this time and time again, especially with other types of content where people feel very pressured to advertise because they're new. And they feel that is the only way to get business. So they don't necessarily think about the long game, about I have to run this podcast for a year before I can get traction. How can people, without advertising, without selling, use their podcast to leverage even more inbound stuff, like from the very beginning? Or do they have to wait for that to happen?
Not at all. I mean, you could do this from the very, very beginning. So I think every time you talk to somebody about your show, that's a potential inbound lead. It could be interviewing guests that will ultimately be customers, or it could be speaking in a way that will attract clients and customers to listen to your show. I also think going on other shows, right? You never know. I mean, podcast listeners listen to other podcasts. So it's that shared audience effect. Go on other podcasts. And each time you do, the audience of that podcast is going to say, oh, I kind of like that person. Maybe I should check out their show, right? And even if not everybody does that, but a few people do that, and you're going on podcasts a couple times a week, 5, 10, 15 times a month, you do the math, and suddenly you get on some bigger shows, especially your audience broadens. And so every time that happens, your show grows, which then, the leads that can result, or the opportunities that become available because you're out there more. David Meltzer is a great example of this. I interviewed him on my show. He's on tons of podcasts, tons of them.
Yeah.
And the guy is he's working constantly, and he's got a great team around him. But he's also humble enough to not he's not like, oh, this person's show's not that big, I'm going to go on there. He's looking at the larger play. You never know who that person is that you're going to build a connection with that could change the course of your entire life. Yeah. And you're one conversation away from a life-changing relationship.
Because I just had a thought. My thought is that not everyone who starts a podcast starts it at the beginning of their business. You may actually be a quite successful business person running a multi-million-dollar company, and you decide, well, now is the time. So even though your podcast may be new and fresh, there are other opportunities by connecting. Yeah.
100%. In fact, I think probably, I don't know what the number would be, but I'd say a lot of companies don't have a podcast and they really want one. They just don't know how to go about it. And then there's companies who are in that stage where you've just shared, where they've had success, or maybe a multi-million-dollar company, but they haven't taken the time. They've been in growth mode. They've been focused on building the business, and it hasn't been part of their marketing, brand development strategy. And then you got some people, and you got to give these people credit, who incorporate it early on into their strategy. And that's great too. I mean, you're going to get all different variations. I think going back to my point earlier, regardless of what phase or stage in development your business is in, make sure you know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Like, what does success look like? Otherwise, if you're doing it for the glamour, the glitz, then you're potentially doing it for the wrong reasons. And most people who do it for the wrong reasons fizzle out. They do what we know is pod fade. They go for 10 episodes and then they're gone. They disappear. And to me, I think that actually does more brand damage than help, because you're putting yourself in a position to it's like you're giving up, and that doesn't feel good.
All right, that's great. We have many questions. I'm going to take 3 more because we're approaching the hour. I don't want to go too much past the hour. I had so many things to ask, but let's prefer the community, and let's take 3 of their questions, right? So first of all, Gail responded and said, "Thanks for answering the question, Billy. Makes sense. I have never done a podcast, but I'm seriously considering it. I've done a few videos on some LinkedIn lives, though." Right, yeah. So Gail has been building up her momentum on LinkedIn. She has actually, we did a video of Gail and she was on this show. And so I'm glad that you're getting help with that, Gail. Somebody's asking, because there are many people who are looking right now who have never ever done a podcast. Someone is asking, which I think you were kind of talking about, and this will answer somebody else's question now in the comments. For a person who doesn't know anything at all about podcasting, how do you enter the podcast stage effectively? Yeah.
Well, those are both very good questions. And thank you, Gail, and the person who just submitted this question as well. I think the first thing to remember is, or I shouldn't say remember, because you may not have ever known this, but what I'll say is it's way less complicated than you may think. Yeah, that doesn't mean it's not a lot of work. It is a lot of work. However, all very doable, and not terribly complex. The nuts and bolts of the operational side of doing a podcast are pretty straightforward. Now there's some things you should know about, how to get the good recording and how to make sure that your interviews are what I'll call more compelling and interesting than boring and cookie cutter, right? So there's all of those things, but I would find somebody who you trust, who's been down the road, who you can learn from, right? And that would be the first thing. Somebody who's already a podcaster, who's done it before, and who could give you some tips. That would be, I wish somebody suggested that to me when I started. Right. So when we, for example, like we help a lot of people launch shows. And so, and by the way, anybody that wants, I could share a launch guide and I'll give it to Juma as well. And we created a 21-step launch guide that walks anyone who wants to start a podcast through all of the parts of the process from A to Z. And it starts with intention. We talk about building your intro, your outro, creating a synopsis of your show, doing a trailer, booking your first 5 to 10 episodes, designing the topic of your show, doing the artwork, what goes into that, everything, featured images for each episode, how to host it, how to make sure it's on all the directories like Spotify and Apple and Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a lot of pieces that you need to know, but you could do the research. I mean, look, everything's available online, as everyone knows. It's I was with my cousin this week. He says it's information retrievable. You can retrieve the information you need. I just happen to have created a document, which you may find value. And I'm also happy to help for anyone that would like that. But my point is, get somebody. It doesn't need to be me. It could be, there's tons of people that do this. So find somebody who you trust, who you think has been at a point where you would like your show to be. You like their style, you vibe with them, and then get them to show you the ropes and teach you a few things. Don't be bashful. Podcasters love helping other future podcasters across the board, right? They just do. I find it to be a very inclusive, empowering, uplifting community of people who are not feeling like danger or resist. They're not putting out resistance. They're not resisting new people. They're welcoming new people. Yeah.
People are getting excited for that guide.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to.
Is it on Podify or where?
Yeah, you can download it on Podify. It's just easy to download. Just go to podify.com, scroll to the bottom, and then you can just download it.
All right, let me just.
Or you could send me a DM on Insta or on LinkedIn or Instagram, anywhere, and I'll send it to you if for whatever reason that didn't work. But yeah, it's set up so you can download it there.
All right, so you could either go to Podify. I'll just put the website up right there. You can go to podify.com, and also Billy will send me the link so I could share it around. That'll be a great resource for people. And let me just run the last question. Okay, I've figured out who has been saying all the things. It's somebody called Lika in our group who's been asking all the questions. All right, and then you have Cassia Marina. Well, I know her. Why am I getting problems to pronounce her name? Lika is doing her bulbs, and podcaster over here. Somebody, right? That's Cassia.
Hey,
yeah. So she's saying she's a podcaster. So I guess in the group they can get help from each other as well as your guide. And the very last question we'll ask, and I think this was kind of answered already, but I'll still put it up so that Billy could take a look at it, is how do you get to know your audience in a close way to draw their attention to your podcast?
Yeah, for the great question, again, for the person who wants to embrace what I shared earlier, and clearly that question is tailored to you. It starts by remembering that you're having a conversation with one other person and treat it as such. And maybe it's an interview, but like make it as easy for them to feel like you're talking to them like you would talk to your best friend. Okay. So it's not listeners, it's you. I'm talking to you. You listening right now. I'm talking to you because I want to share with you what I've learned. And I would love it if you could share with me why did you decide to listen to this show? If interested, I would love to meet you and get to know you. And hey, tell you what, send me a note on Instagram, direct message me on LinkedIn, find me so that I could learn more about you, find out what and how I can make this show more valuable to you. So it's like having that conversation, like I just did, like I modeled right there.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing. And then have systems and tools on the back end to make sure that you're set up to be able to communicate quickly and effectively, whether that be, having, I'm not a big believer in automation that feels fake, but sometimes if you're super busy and you need like Mobile Monkey to help with responding to Instagram, so you could just have something that's, hey, I'm glad you popped in. Send me an email, right? Like that's a better way for me to communicate. Or maybe you have an autoresponder, on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm out of town right now, but I'd love to talk with you. Feel free to book a time here. I mean, there's so many different ways, right? You got to do what the right thing for you is in your phase. So if you're getting a lot of people reaching out to you, you're not gonna be able to meet with all of them. But if it's only 1 or 2 a week, it's pretty easy. And I would say gauge the interest level of your audience by being real with them and asking them point blank to reach out to you. And then when they do, take the time to respond and respond like you respond, not just some bot. And I want to make sure I'm clear on that. Those are just things so that they get a quick response. But then once you have the ability to get in there and make your own response, do it with heart, right? Do it with emotion and feeling, and then follow up, and then set that. Like I had somebody reach out to me and I was like, hey, like, thank you so much for the compliment. They were very like nice about what they said. Like, I'm so glad. Would you be open to meeting? I'd love to get to know you better. We could do a quick Zoom if you're up for it. Something casual like that. It's like you're making a friend, right? So make friends. Your listeners are your friends. Pretend that, and the more you could do that, the more you build that community.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Cassie is saying, such a good tip. Speak directly to one person. It's why I love podcasting. It feels like an intimate conversation. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's great feedback there. And of course, Lika is saying her name is Leica. Sorry.
Oh, Leica. Good.
Yeah. Yes, she's saying that I spoke about pronouncing names correctly earlier. I did research on Billy. I didn't do research on Leica.
Hey, Leica. Thank you for the and I like that the phonetic spelling is super helpful.
Right. All right. So let's bring this segment in for landing. Billy, do you have 5 more minutes? Can I?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Okay, great. So we're gonna do a segment that I like to do called Agree Disagree. It's basically a segment where I make some statements.
I love it. I'm excited. I'm so excited right now. Okay.
And you can agree or disagree with it. So let's run that segment right now. All right, so let's play Agree, Disagree. These are statements that I'm going to make. They are not statements that I agree or disagree with. I have no particular position on them, but some of them are specific to Billy, and you will tell us whether you agree or disagree with them, right?
Okay. Yep, I am ready.
Okay, so this is one I ask everyone, and this is one that is pretty much the start off to the whole thing. Agree, disagree. Passion before skill.
Agree.
All right. Any reason for that, or?
I think you can have skill. Everybody can have skill, but without passion, it doesn't matter. So I think you can't compromise. You cannot compromise passion. You have to have passion, and so that's why it's always going to be. It's going to be number one. Enthusiasm and passion are like the two things that you can't replace. And so I think it's always going to be above. And you can teach and you can learn skill. You can teach skill, but you either have passion and enthusiasm or you don't. And so skill can be acquired.
All right. Agree, disagree. Results are only as valuable as the process.
Results are only as valuable as the process. It's a tough one, man. our results are only as valuable as the process. I feel neutral on this because I feel that I feel okay. So let me ask a clarifying question on this.
Right.
Is
Sure.
this making a commentary on the importance of process? Because if it does, I'm going to say process is more important than results. That's the way I see this. And the reason why process and systems, it's like activities drive results. And the activities are all built into the systems that you create and the processes that you build and the people that you allow to be a part of those things. So I don't know. I know I didn't answer your question, but that's the way I feel about it.
All right, no problem. That's fine. So new one, agree, disagree. And this is one that kind of came up today, so I decided I would throw it in there.
Okay.
People should create shorter podcasts because of shorter attention spans.
I agree. I also feel that doesn't mean that you can't also have some of the potosphere open up to long form. But I do think we live in a world, in a society where people want information as quickly as possible, and they want all the fluff cut out. So cut out anything that doesn't help me and just boil it down. This is why TikTok is such a powerful medium, because if you look at the really good TikTok videos, I could take a 20-minute interview and just get the best pieces and smash it into 1 minute. Or now they do, I think you can do 10 minutes, or 3 minutes, whatever. Yeah, just high octane, concentrated value. People want that. So yes, I agree with that.
Okay, agree, disagree. City life over suburb life.
Agree. You know that. I'm a city guy. I love city life. Suburbs are boring. I don't know. Put me in a city, put me in Tokyo, New York City, London, Rio. I want to be in the city, immersed in everything that's going on, noisy, crazy. I know some of you are like, that sounds terrible. It sounds awesome. I love it. Give me that all day long. I'll eat it with a spoon.
Oh, very, very cool. I knew you're gonna agree with that one. I mean, I don't know how you'd survive in the Caribbean.
Hey, it doesn't mean I don't like those things. It just means I prefer cities overall. I love the vibe of island life and being in that too. Like that, I couldn't do it for a long time.
Right. Just a getaway type of thing. Yeah. All right. Agree, disagree. Being an entrepreneur teaches you more life lessons than working a 9-to-5.
Agree. And especially because most people who are in a 9-to-5 aren't looking for life lessons. They're looking to leave at 5:00, and they're looking to do the bare minimum. Most people, I'm not saying all, most people are doing the bare minimum on the treadmill of Jobville, doing basic, mundane. And again, I'm being generalized, but people want to get out, and they're focused on, and that's fine too, though. Because they're not saying they don't have a good life. They may have a great life. Their work is not where they're gaining value and the things that are important to them. They're probably more interested in family and doing the things outside of work than doing the things inside of work.
Yeah.
And also, an entrepreneur works way more than 9-to-5. So you just do the numbers on like how much opportunity they have to learn because of time. Then of course.
Yeah, definitely. It's like and that's a big joke. It's like I used to work 8 hours a day. Now I'm an entrepreneur and I work 24/7.
That's right. Yeah, it never stops. That's true.
Never stops. And lastly, agree, disagree. This is one that we ask everyone. On social media, you grow more from doing rather than consuming.
Oh, without a question, agree. It's the create, consume paradigm. Ask yourself the question, today, did I consume more than I create, or did I create more than I consume? And if the answer is you consumed more than you created, ask yourself if that's where you want to be. Should the ratio be 1-to-1, 2-to-1, 3-to-1? Where do you want to be when you look back at your life and you say to yourself, I'm glad I did these things? Will you say, I wish I did more of them, I did too much of them, or I did just the right amount? And I think most people regret not doing creative things and things that will enrich their lives and make an impact on other people's lives. So I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a good show on Netflix. I'm not saying you shouldn't consume it all. I love going to the movies. I love listening to music, which music is a whole nother thing because you could do that and other things. But we live in a world where we're constantly fed information, and some of it you learn from, right? So that's not a bad thing, and you should have some of that. But I also think giving yourself the opportunity to also create it flexes a different muscle. So, and everybody's different. Maybe you want 1-to-1, maybe you want a different ratio. But figure out what you do want and then live up to that. Have the mental toughness and fortitude and discipline to do what you want to do. And by the way, not what other people want you to do, not what Billy wants you to do, not what Juma wants to do, not what your parents want you to do. Do what you want to do and make sure that you hold true to that.
Excellent way to bring things in for a landing. Thank you so much, Billy. Tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, for anyone that wasn't here a few minutes ago, I said this, find me on LinkedIn, send me a direct message there. And then you could also send me an email, billy@podify.com, BILLY at Podify, PODIFY.com. Podify, if you want if you want to schedule some time to do a strategy session for your podcast, there's a Calendly link there. You can set up some time with me. You can also download the guide that I spoke about. And other than that, I'm on all the socials. So if you have another one you'd prefer, find me there. And just tell me that you heard this show and this is where you found me. And that'll mean a lot. And I'll let Juma know as well.
Thank you so much for that. And the podcast that Billy has, For the Love of Podcasts, you can go to the website and see that, Inside Out Show, and of course, go to Podify to get that good stuff there. Why did you choose pink and green for Podify?
It's a great question. We started with blue, and then we was like, well, how do we differentiate ourselves and stand out? And I would say that the green is more of an accent. It's really more pink. We're actually shifting away from having the green be as prominent. So pink is in our logo. We went back and forth, but decided but here's an interesting thing. If you look at our logo, the Podify logo, and you see the little arrow looking thing to the left of Podify. Yeah. When you or anyone says Podify, that's the sound wave that it makes.
That's the waveform. I knew it. Yeah. I knew it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Good for you, man. That's a top secret right there. But yeah, I just shared it with your audience.
I do. That's great. That's like a good Easter egg. I mean, I think there is some software that you could use to read those things off. I had a feeling that it's not just an arbitrary shape.
It's not arbitrary. That's true. Yeah. This has been such a pleasure. You are great at what you do and so welcoming, so thorough with your research, so humble, so down to earth, and inclusive of your community and the people who love your show, and for good reason. And I'm super impressed, man, and keep doing what you're doing. And I'm grateful that you've given me the opportunity to share. And I hope that anyone who had an opportunity to listen to any part of it found something that they could apply in their lives. And I just want to say thank you. I really do mean it from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, you're so very welcome. And I'm sure the community is telling you, shouting welcome. We can't hear them, but they're shouting welcome from their respective homes while listening to this late in the evening here in Trinidad and Tobago and around the world. So thank you so much, Billy, for coming on. I appreciate it. It's been a wonderful time, and we have learned so much. And thank you, Useful Content community, for being here. And we will talk to you very, very, very soon. Bye, everyone.
Take care.